Farnia is a managing director and coach at Lancerf Group, a management consulting and coaching company. For decades, she has worked with individuals, teams, and organizations to do difficult things, often after having experienced significant conflict, setbacks, and challenges. So, the topic of our brief conversation today is getting across the finish line, the power of perseverance. Welcome, Harnia. Welcome, Farnia. How are you?
Merhaba Tuğçe, I'm well. Thank you for inviting me to join you. Today is actually a holiday in the US, and if anyone asks me what I did to celebrate, I get to say that I spent the day with my Turkish, Italian, Serbian, and English friends. So thank you for that opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. So today our topic touches on the finish line. It was only a few months ago when we were together in Istanbul for the 1 year anniversary of WEglobal and the Istanbul Marathon. So many of us crossed that finish line. Things have changed so much since then. I wonder, how do you think COVID will have permanent effects on business life?
So you're right. October in Istanbul was only a short time ago. All of us were together and we were celebrating, we were laughing, we were learning, and the energy was perfect. As I flew back to the States, I remember thinking that this company is going to grow. We co-created a plan, we have the right teams in place, and WeGlobal is led by a passionate and visionary leadership. Since then, the world has changed. We've been challenged in new ways, and there are new opportunities that may never have been entertained. There are at least 5 ways that I think COVID will change the business world. And the first is that we work. Globally, we've seen unemployment skyrocket during the pandemic. Businesses such as, brick and mortar retail stores where we go shopping, travel, tourism, entertainment, education, and other businesses that offer social services have been adversely affected. On the other side of that, others are thriving and they're hiring immensely, but maybe those jobs require new skills. So second, I think we've already seen businesses, it's where we work. We've already seen businesses that traditionally required employees to be in the office. They've quickly adapted to remote work. And then employees have had to adapt to remote work as well. So in some instances, that means converting spaces at home, like you have a small corner at home, and now it's your home office, and all it is a table and a chair. It also means that people can be more creative about balancing their family obligations. So I have a good friend, she sheltered at home, but it wasn't her home, it was her mother's home. And she sheltered at home with her mother to get childcare because while she was working during the day, she needed that extra support. So the third thing I think COVID is going to change about business is how we work. So instead of walking over to a colleague and asking the question, we now use internal employee communication tools like Teams, like Slack, or like Jabber, and we use them frequently. And those networks are important to ensuring that we stay connected with our colleagues and our friends at work. So life is different because we've gotten used to seeing each other like now in these little tiny boxes on the screen, like we're all looking at little heads on a screen. There was an article published in USA Today that stated that many people and companies are experiencing gains in productivity. And that's not necessarily what we would have thought, is that there would be such gains in productivity. But what that's telling us is that people are feeling better working from home. So for us, like we're in consulting, the way that we build relationships with clients is changing. There's less travel involved, but now we have more time for direct virtual contact. So at any time of the day, I can get on a Zoom call, or I can get on a WebEx, or I can get on the phone even and reach out to a client just to see how they're doing. I don't have to plan a trip. I don't have to get on a train, a plane. I don't have to drive anywhere. I can just lift up a device and connect immediately. So I think the fourth way that business is changing is who we work with. So for many of us who sheltered at home with family members, we now have a new set of coworkers. In the morning, rather than say, I'm going to the kitchen, my husband now says, I'm headed to the cafe, or I'm going to Starbucks, but the Starbucks is our kitchen. And our dining room is the employee break room. So when we have lunch in the dining room, but it's the employee break room. So, besides that, there's like a renewed sense of community. Like I am in a new place and I have new neighbors. And if COVID hadn't happened, I wouldn't be able to connect with my community in the same way. I met some neighbors, they have a garden, they give me some vegetables sometimes, but they also connect me to resources, local resources. So you'll see a lot of local businesses that are seeing increased demand for their services because of those local connections. So the last thing, I'll say about this, the change in business is the type of work that we do. So if there was a digital divide before, COVID made it light years bigger. Having access to internet and technology devices is a deal breaker nowadays. It's clear that these resources are critical, and people learned in the past few months, they learned new technologies and they learned new processes, and companies have started to capitalize on shifting consumer behavior. So 8 months ago, if I were to ask you, hey, are you okay if the government tracks your whereabouts, if they know where you are at all times, so they know if you're tracking or passing on a disease or an illness, most of us would say no. Like nobody wants anyone tracking you, to know where you go and how long you're there. But since then, the sentiment has changed. Like we're concerned, and the sentiment has changed.
Yeah, that's true, Farnia. Thank you. Farnia, what was the crisis period you encountered and resolved? What kind of crisis management policy did you follow?
So there are many. People typically hire like us to map out their way out of confusion. But if I really think, I'll say many years ago, I started in a new role in a new company with a significant mandate. I was number 2 in what later grew to nearly 200 people in a division of an organization. And we had only a few months to do due diligence, present a business case, and secure funding for what was supposed to be a multi-year project. So my leadership was traveling the world, and he was also recovering from a significant personal loss at the time. So my job then became to lead a disparate team through a complex analysis and then make it make sense so we could not only secure funding, but also leadership confidence. And if I ask myself, what policy did I follow? Well, a few weeks back, I think Levent made recommendations on what to do in turbulent times. So I'm going to talk about this through that lens. The first thing was give people what they need when they need it. My leadership needed to know that I would act in his place because he didn't have the capacity to do that. 2, communicate clearly, simply, frequently. We kept in contact across time zones via telephone, via email, at all, again, times of the night, because it was important to do that. 3, be honest. When things became difficult, I told him. If it wasn't working, I told him. When he hit roadblocks, he told me. So we built trust. 4, I would say, emphasize the positive and forge bonds. So in just 1 month, I had to meet more than 70 people and learn to work well with each and every one of them. Many of those relationships still exist for me more than a decade later. And lastly, I'll actually, this isn't the last, but I'll say the crisis will end. All crises do come to an end. 6 months after we did this work, we presented the business case and secured the funding. And ultimately we achieved our goals. It was, stressful, challenging to do that, but it worked, and we finished it. And that was the point, is we finished it. So I will add one more to Levent's list and say, begin with the end in mind. Focus forward and don't get bogged down on the magnitude of your mission. Create a roadmap and do your best to avoid unnecessary diversions. Welcome those diversions that are additive. So if something's actually benefiting you and it's not exactly on the track that you want it to be on, that's okay, because it's adding something to your journey. Sometimes you have to craft and stick to plans even when it gets uncomfortable. If you set your sights on what you know now and how you will feel and who you will be with and what the experience will be when you arrive at your goal, you can get through turbulent times.
Yes, we are amazed by your speech, really. What do you think about the social life and time management in the home office period? Any motivational suggestions?
Okay. I think you're asking me about balance. Achieving balance became really complicated with COVID. Even though we all have so much more time at home, we were stuck there. We're stuck at home. I mean, in certain places, people are now leaving their house often, but we're still stuck at home in the US. At the onset of COVID, I was really frustrated. I like to travel. I'm used to being up early. I'm used to traveling somewhere to do something. And my perspective was, being stuck at home is going to stop my progress. It's going to crush my creativity. But as time passed, I realized I can challenge myself to assess, how much can I actually accomplish from home? Like, what can I do from exactly where I am? I enjoy eating hot lunch. So for the first few weeks, I started eating home cooked meals for lunch every day. As time kept passing, and by now I'm eating cold cereal every day. So that's something that's changed, but that's okay. What I found was most helpful, though, was when I decided to reinvent my schedule. There were up to 5 hours of my day that I could reallocate from transitioning between work and home to something else. My days have gotten longer. I'm still able to wake up by 5:30, exercise, spend a few hours preparing my house to take on the day. I can work, and then in the evening, I can spend some time working on, pet projects or bucket list projects or hobbies. Like, I managed to, paint outside, and I managed to, create a garden outside. It was just little things that I would have never had time to do if I was not in this COVID period. So the time that, folks used to spend in the office investing in relationships there, you can now invest that same time through Jabber or other means with your colleagues, or investing in local relationships with your neighbors and neighborhood, and connecting with your family on Zoom or Skype or any other technology source. I've taken some LinkedIn learning classes and done some language classes and several other things along those lines. But I encourage people to find their balance, because it's possible. Like, we can balance time and social life. So in summary, I would say you can reinvent your schedule and reinvest your time into things that are important for you in this time.
Good to hear that. What do you think the people's strategy of a company should include?
Well, people strategy is like two sides of a coin. So one side is what you do for the company, or what you do for your team. So that means, like, when people decide to show up, whether they join a team, join a group, or go to work, they want to know what the agenda is. They want to know why they're there, and they want to know why you need them. Once they agree to do whatever the job is, they want to know the rules. Like, how do I win in this place? What does success mean in this place so that they can tailor their contributions to meet or exceed the standard that's set. So that kind of describes clarity of role definition. It mostly talks to what people can do for you or the team or a company. The other side of that coin is what the company does for you. So the reward structure. People want to know that they're being compensated in a way that also helps them to reach their dreams, whether those dreams are including financial stability, family, or something else. People want to know that just as they are investing their talents in their work, the company or the team is investing in their growth and their development. I think I see someone raising their hand. And I'm not quite sure how to pick up Tuğçe. I see someone raising their hand with a question. Should we pause here and take the question, or?
I think we can going on.
Okay.
And the end of the meeting, we can have the questions.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. So whoever just raised their hand, if you could just hold off for a little bit, I think we're going to make some time for questions. We have plenty of time for questions in just a moment. So wrapping up the other side of the coin, while there are a bunch of elements, I could go on and on and on about people strategy, but I think people really want to know that you see who they are and their unique life experiences, and they're included. So that ties to the importance of diversity and inclusion. Now, I'm not saying this is every element of people strategy, but I think if people are clear on what they do for the company and the company articulates that in a way that makes sense, and they understand what they're getting from a company or a team or an entity, and they feel as if they belong, like they're not just another coin, they're a different coin, but they're part of the whole. I think that sets up for a comprehensive people strategy.
I appreciate that you mentioned diversity and inclusion. Finally, as you know, WEglobal is very different than other companies. Our company is 60% female. We come from many different backgrounds, and our employees exist across several different generations. Farnia, what are your suggestions on how we can persevere in this regard?
Yes, that is great. Many women at We in positions of authority. So diversity and inclusion hits close to home for me for several obvious, you can see me, right? And not so obvious reasons. It may be clear that I'm a woman and also clear that I'm a person of color, but what may not be as apparent is that my family spans religion, continent, color, ability, orientation, and 7 languages. And every difference between us is what makes the family stronger. As you may know, there have been, increasingly visible, terrible acts of racial injustice in the United States lately. And as upsetting as this is, that here we are in the year 2020 and this is happening, I'm motivated to continue the educational process, and I'm optimistic about change. I recall in 1990, I think it was, I was with my family and 150,000 others going across the Brooklyn Bridge in New York City to protest discrimination by the Food and Drug Administration and Centers for Disease Control. They unscientifically suggested that Haitian people were a high-risk group for HIV and could not donate blood. So several months later, after this protest, again, it was totally unscientific, the laws were changed. And over many years, the stigma persisted, but we persevered. The laws were actually changed. So I tell that story to say, being different is the beginning of a conversation. It's not the end, it's the beginning. So when we teams at WeGlobal walk into client sites, they are stronger because they exist across generations. They are stronger because they have different cultural affiliation. You are better able to relate to and understand the perspective of different stakeholders that may be sitting at the table right next to you because you may cross age boundaries. There may be a very young person at a table with an expert. However, the team together can benefit a client because their perspectives are unique and their perspectives are different. So it's those differences that will help we to win.
Yeah. So we are nearly at time. Farnia, could you hear me?
Oh yeah, I hear you perfectly.
Yeah, okay. So we are nearly at time. Nearly all of the team is joining us now, Teams. Is there anything that you want to ask us?
I guess I do, you know. I haven't seen you guys in many months, right? So I would like to hear from one or two of you. What have you learned during this crisis, and what is, you know, the question in this topic is perseverance. What does perseverance look like for you right now? Anyone want to venture? Whoever raised their hand.
Yeah, we can take a question from audience. Please write your question to chat box, or please up your hand. Any questions?
Oh, I now see the question. Someone was asking me to open my camera. Sorry about that. So were there any periods of
Yeah.
crisis that the team may have encountered?
If you have any question, you can raise your hand or write the chat box. Nothing?
Nothing. Oh, that's okay.
Hi.
I mean, oh, actually, someone just asked. So, what
Yes.
was the benefit of the crisis for me? And I guess there are several benefits. It's hard to say that a crisis could be beneficial, but there are so many. I have a large extended family, and we've now started to do weekly Zooms, not quite every week, but the family gets together and we see one another on the screen. It's not the same as being in person, but given the changes and the people are different ages and they're living in different places, the probability of us seeing one another in the past was, I mean, all we had to do was make a phone call or use the same technology before. But this period has caused us to connect more frequently using tools that already existed. We never thought to do it before, but being separated and forced to separate brought about some changes. And I deeply appreciate that part of this crisis.
Thank you. Our audience, have you got any question or comment?
We have a quiet audience today. I think I'm what's standing between the team and potentially the end of the day. I see another question coming across.
Yes, the new one.
It was, am I one of those people who turned COVID into an opportunity? So in some regards, I would say yes. I am one of those people that turned COVID into an opportunity. Perhaps not, you know, I didn't launch a new business or I didn't create in that way. But personally, I think the connections that I have with my family, the connections that I even have with myself, like exploring in the past, again, I shared my interest in always being somewhere else and producing and doing and always on the go, 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 never recognizing that being at home is enough. And this period has forced me to take that, you know, that introspective look, and I deeply appreciate my home life much more than ever before. I've discovered an arboretum in my neighborhood. I discovered the wood. There's an area that there's fantastic bird watching that's relatively close by. There were fantastic things that are right at my disposal, and I never noticed them before because I didn't have the time, even after work, to do that type of exploration. And someone else asked a question and said,
Yeah.
do you think people would become less motivated in the future? That's a very, very real, and I appreciate that question. I really do. There is a very high population of people that don't feel so great about COVID, right? I mean, they're seeing death in their immediate surroundings. They're losing people that they care about or people that they've worked with. Nobody wants to experience that. It's challenging. It is disheartening. It is emotionally turbulent. At one point, they were not allowed, and even now, I think that's still the case, they're not allowing people to visit their loved ones in the hospital. So if someone is critical and critically ill, they can't be with the people that they love to hold them, to touch their hand. They can't embrace, they can't console one another. So yes, that has resulted in quite a bit of demotivation for people through this period. Waking up and not feeling, if you're lucky enough to be one of the few that are still working and doing meaningful work, sometimes waking up and still being in the same physical space loses its excitement. Like you get up and you're like, okay, one more day, I'm getting up, I'm gonna eat, I'm gonna cook, I'm gonna work, I'm gonna go to sleep. It loses its luster. And so we do realize, like across the board, many people are suffering emotionally. And what you're saying is some companies are investing in emotional support and or employee networks that can support those kinds of conversations, open conversations. So yes, there are people many people that are demotivated during this period if they're used to connecting in more personal and direct ways. I see another question there. And it says, what about the shifting of the consultancy after COVID? Any new approaches or new ideas? So I think it was a few months back, we had a board meeting with Levent and the rest of the board. And we were brainstorming ideas, just, having, open conversation as we always do. And we were like, what is a way? Is there another way to connect during a period like this? What can be different? And the answer is quite a bit can be different. In this period, while it may feel like maybe contracts are not closing as rapidly as they did before, because clients are not able to be at their physical spaces, or you're not able to join them in their physical spaces, what you can do differently is connect with clients or people you've worked with in the past directly. Like now is the time, because most people have, a little bit more time to their day. They may be balancing family life, again, children or spouses, or family life with work life, and that's nothing to be diminished. However, they may also have a few minutes to talk casually during the day. I would encourage those to connect with people you've worked with in the past and identify what are their struggles today? What are their new struggles today? Because what they may have been dealing with in the past may not be what they're dealing with right now. Business has changed not only for WeGlobal, but it's changed globally. So almost all businesses had to reinvent themselves in some small or large way. Some of them still have not yet recovered. So as a member of the WeGlobal family, are you preparing yourself for what is next? Are you doing the research on what shifts are happening in your local markets? What shifts are happening with the clients that you work with? Do you have those insights? Are you pursuing those insights? I would strongly recommend, use this time. If you have an extra 1 or 2 or 3 hours to your day, use this time to make yourself better, to learn something new so that you can better connect with clients you've worked with in the past, or better prepare yourself to work with different clients in the future. I know we talk about people strategy briefly on this call, what I'd like to add to that, I know we're almost at time, Tuğçe, so you're going to kick me off, but what I'd like to add to that is part of people's strategy is preparing for what's next, right? Preparing you for your next step at WeGlobal. So are you ready for that next role? Are you ready for the next engagement with your new client? How are you preparing yourself to do that? Are you talking to internal experts at WeGlobal so you can learn from their experience? If you're not doing those things during this time, you may not be taking advantage of COVID-19. So I realize that we're at time, Tuğçe, so I don't want to hold people from their weekend too much longer.
Yeah, thank you, Farnia. It was a great meeting. We appreciate your time.
Well, I'll say thank you.
Yeah.
It is always a pleasure. Again, I look forward to connecting with you guys at all times because as much I have a good time.
Yeah, thank you all the audience.
Thank you, the audience, for joining. I see that we have quite a few people,
really.
and I appreciate your participation.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. See you. Bye-bye.